Do great chiropractors succeed because of what they know or because of what they're still willing to question? Hi there, I'm Greg Venning. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractor podcast, where we help you run a practice that you absolutely love, that is structured and organized for flow so you can change the world one person at a time and enjoy the profits that come from that. That's what we call the attractive practice. And in this episode of the Questing Chiropractor podcast, we're going to dive deep into this idea of certainty versus curiosity. So chiropractic is a profession that's built on certainty, on conviction. We study hard, we learn things, we do diagnosis, we develop strong beliefs around the body, about care, and about what works. And that certainty can be powerful. It gives us a certain level of trust with our practice members, but it can also hold us back. It's a quiet paradox in chiropractic that actually that very certainty that might help us to build a practice to a certain level gets in the way of growing beyond that, because the chiropractors who keep evolving, the ones who deepen their impact over decades, are the ones who hold on to something different to certainty: curiosity. Because growth in this profession isn't about learning more, it's about seeing things differently. So listen on this episode if you want to understand why some chiropractors keep evolving and growing while others quietly plateau, even though they're hardworking, skilled, and they genuinely care about their practice members. Discover how curiosity changes the way you communicate, adjust, and lead your practice, often producing much better results and much stronger practice member commitment. And if you want your practice to keep growing over the long term, not by chasing new tactics, but by developing a perspective that allows you to adapt and deepen your impact over decades, this is for you. As always, as you listen and watch, if you think this is for a colleague, please send it to them if you think it'll help them. Click subscribe, put notifications on, and give us up to a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're on. It really does help us to make great content for you. And you'll join Nimrod and Mark on the other side of this. Listen on. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractor podcast. We help you grow as visionary, vital, and capable chiropractors who are always on. We do things differently as we help to elegantly awaken your innate wisdom within. We help you create robust, predictable, and trustworthy practices that serve oceans of people and yet still have free time for yourselves and your families. We use neuroscience to deliver better business results so that you can get greater, deeper, and more effective impact in more ways. We are Questing Chiropractors, and this is our story.
Hi, Mark. Fantastic to be spending some time with you again, recording another podcast.
Hi, Nimrod, and thanks for having me appear. So it's always great to be able to appear wherever you are in the world.
Yes, you're on my hemisphere at this point in America. Yeah, and
Yep.
Spending winter solstice rather than the southern hemisphere summer solstice. Changes in beliefs and what happens and what comes up, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's sort of, and particularly in high altitude, you get the chance to observe from above down, and it's a good time to reflect at this time of the year too. So
those short days and the increasing sunshine now on the other side of it means it is reflection, but it's also hope for the future, isn't it?
it is, and that's what's so fitting with the holiday period of Christmas and then the New Year period of looking ahead. So yeah,
Beautiful.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, today you've brought a really very relevant topic, which is having a look at what happens when we are in contradiction or in conflict between our beliefs and our purpose and our feeling of doubt and uncertain and hunting for more just to build up our level of certainty. So could you share with us why is this topic particularly relevant?
Well, I guess, for me, having, ticked over the half century in chiropractic and, had certainly many tens of chiros working with us in practices. And then having spent probably half of my professional career, last 25 years within the education sector, there's a trend, and there's a trend which I don't know whether is that useful, and it also leads to the body of knowledge. The trend being that the awareness of the detail and the focus on the detail, the focus on inductive reasoning, is of high value, particularly in the academic or academically driven chiropractic institutions, which then leads to students who have a high value in that particular way of thinking, as compared to those that maybe have a more deductive approach to knowledge and to science, and that then leads into the inductive approach. So what we've found is that, based on the innate model's awareness that the right frontal is an area that tends to think deductively. It tends to think into the big picture, take the principles, and then work top down. Whereas the inductive approach is the bottom up, specific observations that lead to general conclusions. But it always there's certain extreme certainty about the details, but doubt about the probabilities, because they're never totally put to rest. So
Yeah.
it creates sort of a state of somewhat confusion, because most people get into chiropractic out of a deductive approach of, wow, with my hands I can do this, and this is
Yeah.
amazing thing that people I can help. And by the time they've finished their uni, they're doubting their ability to create change, because they're very, very certain about certain literature and certain processes from the past that have been discovered. Without that sort of big picture, top down flavor, it does produce confusion. So we've seen that with graduates over the years, and then the interesting thing that happens when the graduate or the chiropractor, that could have been in practice for 20, 30, 50 years as well, that they decide to look at, why am I here? Why am I doing what we're doing? What is the bigger purpose here? And that then starts to seed a different question that doesn't negate the inductive reasoning, but it takes them into a more sort of organized structure of their science. So, the questions we ask is what we get within our science, and science can prove anything. It's about the question we ask it. And so by asking a different question of ourselves and our practice and our life, it starts to open the opportunities back up again. And that flow comes, as chiropractic is attests to, from above down and inside out. So, and that then changes the practice. That changes the dynamics of the practitioner's abilities, and obviously the thing that follows with that is increased service to people and increased income for the chiro and so forth. So there's I think probably a deductive process I've been observing over time relative to this. And I think it's really important for us to be aware of maybe how this fits together. And it is a key element for chiropractors to enjoy the bounty that chiropractic brings for their lives and their people.
Yeah, beautiful. So before we, unpack all of that, I think, you mentioned that when we lean into the bigness of chiropractic, then there are bounties galore, and not only for us, but obviously for our people that we care for, and collateral effects, or, consequential effects and impacts on the lives that they touch. And the opposite is true as well. When we're burrowed down into that uncertainty and doubt and lean so heavily on that inductive process, we close ourselves off and we lose a large part of that magic to serve. Have you noticed that with practitioners, with associates, with the principal chiropractor as well?
It's interesting too, because the paradox there with you mentioned uncertainty. The more we're certain, the more we're uncertain. If that could be I don't really know how to explain that other than, certainly there's a really high aspiration of the quadrant 2 part, which is the left hindbrain, and is what the universities and the places of higher learning are about. They're not about the application necessarily. They're not about the why, the big picture, because it's too fluffy. It's not sensate enough. So the certainty actually leads to absolute black and white about something that has been agreed on, and uncertainty about that which has yet to be proved. And it could be observed, but it's not necessarily proved. So that's it becomes a bit of a trap to our thinking. And if we take the other side of that, the curiosity is a major driver then of the purpose. It's like that's what causes us to ask questions. And a life well lived is a life, I think, that asks questions, that's curious about things and wanting to discover. And that obviously leads to this beautiful path of the nurture, the organization that takes place around these presuppositions. And we can then make the science relative to that. And then that leads us into our expression, which I'm sure we'll get into.
So I want to give a practical example of this. And the way I think about it is the more we lean into certainty, the more we close ourselves off to a healthy doubt, which is, really rooted in curiosity. So science, the history of science is full of these examples. We don't have to look very far. But one that, I think I always come back to is we all take for granted the idea of tectonic plates and the idea that there's continental drift. But it was actually 100 years ago that it was first proposed in theory to the Royal Society of Science in Britain. And they kicked the guy out because it didn't fit within their paradigm, because they were so certain they couldn't have healthy doubt. And so, they couldn't believe that there were these huge plates just below the surface that would actually move and recreate the shape of the Earth. And of course, now it's taken for granted. And science is full of these examples. And I think chiropractic is too. And we don't have to look much beyond questions like, what is my technique allowing or closing down? Or what is my belief about philosophy or science allowing or closing down? Or about human potential, or about my team? There's many of these examples, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And and that global perspective is set in jelly. It's a snapshot in time that we tend to make out, for example, our beliefs on. And it will be filtered through our sum total of our curiosity and our purpose. And that then sort of leads into the expression into our life. So, and a change in fact can, or an experience can change one's belief.
If we're open to it.
If we're open to it, exactly.
Yeah, which is a belief as well, right?
Absolutely. It's a peace soup.
Yeah, it is. So if we look at the four things that maybe come into this whole discussion of, firmly held beliefs and the search for greater and greater certainty versus healthy doubt and curiosity. So, we'd look at first, what are those sorts of beliefs? What's my purpose? So what's the frame for this? And then we can look at, how am I going to organize around this? How am I going to keep learning and searching for data and information and knowledge and control to give a good, strong framework for my beliefs? And from that, how would that flow to my design, my tactics, what I do, how I implement and apply? And then the fourth part of it would be, well, how is this all integrated or not? And then how does this relate to the sort of outcomes that I would get? So let's take this one step at a time. When we start with belief and purpose, how does that relate to our search, our need for certainty, our desire for control?
Well, firstly, within a model which has this right frontal area fielding these positions of purpose and belief, and they're oppositely opposed. So they're as the antithesis as purposes to the extreme of or even curiosity, to the extreme of the quadrant 2 part, which is certainty. So there's an internal adjustment that's being made all the time from a position of curiosity. We could see something. We could, based on where we're at right now in terms of our value structure and our awareness, we can see something. We can have an opposing philosophy, and so that's where the belief either will or won't change. If the philosophy is stronger than the evidence or the drive in this curiosity sense, it's going to negate it or not even see it. That's where scotomas happen. It's just it's right in front of us, but we don't see it because our philosophical constructs are too great to allow that to occur. So I think that there's within us in this element of experience of what we have in our world, and specifically chiropractic here, we often blindly go along doing our beliefs and driven by our philosophy, and don't notice things. We're not being curious about our interactions and the results thereof, and the indicators and the contraindicators that we might see are overdriven by the philosophy. It could be that we have a certain technique that says you do things in a certain order in a certain way, and yet you see when you observe that person, or you get some feedback from that person, that there's something else that's standing in the way of this. But because the belief in the philosophy of the given approach is so strong, that curiosity is dampened or maybe extinguished. And so we go through our practice life adhering to a very strict guideline or set of rules it will morph into, based on a philosophical understanding, which is the construct that we make when we do a belief. So, the challenge is, how do we challenge our beliefs? How do we allow this curious part to come in and do something which is, or suggest something which is way outside of our quote unquote norm.
Yeah. So before we do jump ahead and look at how could we challenge our belief, if we believe that we should challenge our beliefs, maybe. So an example of this in technique may be, something like the merit chart, where we believe that, certain organs are controlled by certain nerves. And if someone presents with a symptom or a sign, then I need to look up, the vertebra related to that. Or do or don't adjust sympathetics and parasympathetics, or do or don't adjust too much, or do or don't adjust the first, the upper cervicals, or do or don't follow the system and structure of my technique and move beyond that. These can be guiding and helpful, and they can also close us off, right? And that will all come from our belief around the application of our technique.
Yes. Yeah. And that's that the dogma that can come from that is something that can hold a person back. It can hold a profession back, and the thing that will allow that to shift or allow that to see a different viewpoint is the adherence or the recognition and the discovery of. I think it's probably the journey through life is that discovery of purpose, and often it's not even evident in our lifetime. So we're on this journey, which if we allow ourselves to be curious, will lead us in a path on that journey of investigating many, many different shapes and sizes and elements. And I mean, you look at someone like BJ Palmer and DD, in fact, who were curious people, and particularly BJ with his more global approach. DD was more about either farmers, but the global approach of BJ was huge. I mean, exploring caves and exploring mountains and exploring cultures and exploring, different approaches of human beings around the world was all part of his discovery that then sort of morphed into that philosophical construct that we've taken on board as chiropractors. That this is it's not just a one size fits all.
Yeah. And, I think bringing up BJ is a really good example where it does cross over from belief into technique. For a while, BJ believed that the only way to practice chiropractic was upper cervical. And then his belief, his purpose grew beyond that. And he saw that upper cervical is one way to do it, but it's not the only way. And so I think for people listening to this, if you believe that, my purpose is to apply my specific technique to people in practice, it may be useful to have a look at that and feel challenged by the fact that your purpose is bigger than the application of your specific technique.
Yeah, and if you retrospectively look at that, BJ's position on technique was, and many elements that drove that technique, which we're looking at here at the moment, the purpose and beliefs and so forth, but was polarizing. And if we could take a mega position on this one, that the polarization that BJ created allowed others to go and do their good thing, and so Logan, for example, was a breakaway because he was saying, well, it's all in the sacrum, and BJ's saying it's all in the upper cervical, and so I don't want to talk to you, So so there was this schism there, and then you had someone like Dijonette that came along and said, well, wait a minute, it's the sacrum and the occiput working in sync, So and then he was ostracized, but each of those developed their following and their colleges and their the structures that came from that. And if you look at the tree of chiropractic techniques and chiropractors who've contributed along the way, there's literally thousands of branches that come from that. Not just I'm just giving 3 people as an example, but there's all the sub branches and everything that took place there too. So that's so it's not that there's a negative value around having a stuck philosophical position, having a stuck belief, and
absolutely.
Probably some of the greatest developers in the world have been people who have been really strong in their belief, and it may have cost them their lives, and undoubtedly probably did, and but then that mission that followed from that is still being adhered to and recognized.
Yeah,
so
beautiful.
Which is sort of it's sort of cool, because it's not like, hey, this is a really the best way to play it. You get your purpose, and then you're always curious about things, so you constantly change your beliefs and you constantly change your philosophy. No, that's far from the truth. And the fact is that we can.
Yeah. Well, if we're too much in jelly, then we won't find a way out, right?
Correct.
So that's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
So just before we leave this first part, which is looking at beliefs and purpose should drive our why, to look at our what, to look at our technique and our science. If someone is feeling that they've started too much with, as you said, as a graduate, with technique and science is going to give me the answer, and I haven't looked at my driving purpose and belief, how would they know that, and what would be a simple tactic to start to help them move towards that greater perspective?
I think that the test of our inner reality is exhibited in our external reality. So in other words, what we have is a result of what we do, and what we do is a result of what we be. So, the elements that are set up in this particular discussion around purpose and beliefs are elements that infiltrate our being, the depths of our being. So if we can make when we make a shift, and none of us are totally set in stone, that when we make a shift and we have this curious moment and we bring on a new way of seeing something, which is the mother of invention. That's where invention begins. To see a different way, that then leads to a cascade that ends up as doing things differently, therefore getting different outcomes. And so, if anyone's unhappy with their outcomes, then it's very useful to go back to one's purpose and say, well, what have I discovered so far about life and about my existence and my journey, and how much do I have here or how much space do I have for this? And this is something that I think go back to the education system in our current form, and it's dissolving very quickly. But over the last couple of 100 years, it's been an industrial fodder for the factories type of education system, which then doesn't want people to be curious about anything, and doesn't want people to have a philosophical structure outside of the philosophical structure that was laid down back in the day. So I think that those Industrial Revolution relics are still there; they're still existing. And they're weakening their power. And we can see this in so many different areas. So
it's very authoritarian, isn't it? Very dogmatic, closed off, and what modernization, industrialization, and scientism has given us is it could only be true if I can sense it, and nothing else could be true. So that's obviously going to be quite a narrow way to experience life. And I just want to touch on one thing, which is if you do find that your results are not where you want to be, and you circle back around and say, perhaps exploring with curiosity, my beliefs and my purpose would be useful. One little warning about that is it's possible to get lost in that process, isn't it? To really navigate ourselves through it and not know where we're going or where we are.
Yeah, and the getting lost and the confusion and the cloudiness, if you like, and you can take an atmospheric analogy on this one. That's as you go through different levels of altitude, you're going to run into different conditions that cause the vehicle you're in, say it's an airplane, to become unstable, and you can either go back down to a lower level, and therefore there's more friction, and it takes you longer to get there and uses more fuel and all the rest of it, or you can punch through that layer and go to the next one, and there will be a sweet spot there. But based on the design of the aircraft. Now, we're not aircraft, but we are vehicles, and we can actually redesign our vehicle so we can operate at higher levels. Whereas an aircraft is it's got an operating range of optimal efficiency. We don't know what our operating range is because there's so much potential that lies within. So I think we take it from that position. We have this wonderful ability to adapt, and that then changes the outcomes. And so that goes back to that what you're getting, what you're having, will shift. And so that's probably the best indicator. If what you're getting right now is a practice where a few people come in every now and then for a bit of a crack, and they don't get, no matter how much you lecture them, they don't get that there's anything more to chiropractic than what they're getting, and what they're coming for. Then that's an opportunity for you to question your purpose. And I would suggest that as you get clearer on that, and as you're more curious about the individual you're working with, and not relating a dogma or a certain philosophy that is yours and it's what you've got and you defend it with your life, so to speak. If you're willing to allow that to be more plastic, and allow it to shift, you're going to find that people start to come in for reasons which are maybe more holistic or greater or bigger, or they have a different viewpoint on it. So it's a subtle shift at the unseen from the outsider, within oneself, that changes one's being. It changes the vibration of the individual, and that then shifts the actions of that individual. You walk differently. We speak differently. We have our expression different, and so that then leads to results which are commensurate with that. And all of a sudden, people start bringing their families in, and they start saying, this is amazing. It's shifting my life, and how can I get my whole office team on this, and all that sort of stuff. So, and obviously that's increasing the, by getting clear on our purpose, it increases our capacity. And so that's like redesigning an airplane, to go back to that analogy. There would be, well, I'm a tiger moth, which is one of those little, I don't know, two-seaters or something like that, biplane, with a, like a lawnmower engine on it. And we have the ability to re-engineer ourselves. We don't have to stay as a little tiger moth and picking up the crumbs around the outside of the practice. We can re-engineer ourselves to become, a supersonic fighter or a spacecraft or whatever that high level of engineering is concerned. That can be the human form.
An intergalactic fleet of flying vessels.
Exactly. There we go.
So great. So we've talked a lot about belief and purpose and its relationship to driving our desire for certainty and maybe being open to healthy doubt and exploration and curiosity. And let's quickly touch on what that means in terms of, if that belief and purpose is there or isn't there, how would that impact our hunt for organization and control?
If our, to give that first example, if you I would call them patients at this level, that they're running the practice, they run you, they come in when they want, and you sort of encourage it, or you don't sort of take any organization or control over it, then that will keep happening, right? So in other words, there's a shift at the top level, which within purpose and beliefs that we talked about. Then the being part of you, if you shift your reason for doing, and start doing more organization, more control, which it just follows. You get organization, it has a structure to it, and that then causes people to engage in that structure. And you say, look at organizations such as, the legal system. There's huge organization within that gives it control. Various religions, there's various tribes, there's organization there, there's a hierarchy, or there's some form of ascendancy that allows people then to be controlled, but also to flourish because there is control. So, we have organization around what side of the road we drive on, and you travel from country to country, and it could be left, it could be right, but it's an organization there which gives, in some countries you wonder whether there is any control, but it all seems to work. And if you've been to Southeast Asia, that's probably true.
Or Rome.
Yeah, or Rome, absolutely. The only control is the horn.
Yeah.
So- and that's just the harmony, a cacophony of
Yeah.
horns.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think having that organizational structure in place allows the elements to start to come into a sequence, and that control is comforting to the person. And this is where, if we go into the Quest Center, for those of you who are within Quest, and you'll find a plethora of organizational stuff that allows control to occur within the office, within the practice, that is relevant to whatever your identity and purpose is. So, there's different, you could have organization control and that previous example of someone who just comes in for a quick crack every now and then. And it just happens to be in their court, and it just happens to be on their time and when they decide. But that is organization and control, so if you want to change that and you go back to look at, okay, well, what is actually my purpose on this? I don't want to be, going in there on Monday morning, there's no one in the book, and by Monday afternoon, the whole week's full. Maybe that's not the style I want to do, because it's a personalized practice. I won't be able to sell it, and I won't be able to bring associates in, blah, blah, blah. So, there's a, if, ands, and buts on that one. It could be useful, it could not be useful. If it's not useful, then we go back from trying to reorganize the organization or trying to control the people, and that just irritates the people and frustrates you. So, that's not very useful, even though you're so certain about it. It can't cover that level. We can't change matter with matter. We have to look at the energetic substance. So we go back to the purpose and say, okay, well, who am I? What am I here for? What's my value? What are my scary points?
Yeah. Just to expand on that point just a moment, the fact that we believe we can change matter with matter, or I can take your pain or your symptom away, or I am responsible for your health and your quality of life, is a belief.
Yes.
And so if we're living in that belief and getting outcomes that are frustrating us, that's a beautiful invitation to sit back and challenge your beliefs and your purpose. It's the same thing as saying, if I and if I adhere dogmatically to my technique process and I'm not getting the results every time that I would love to get, it's a similar thing. It's trying to change matter with matter. And it's an invitation for exploration, curiosity, and flexibility.
Totally. I mean, you see so many amazing chiropractors technically, who and they have all the knowledge, they have the degrees, they have the technical skills. They could fix anything, if you like, in terms of the human body, and they've got empty offices. People just come and go every now and then when they have a problem. And it's frustrating, and it tends to cause a person to devolve and reinforce a belief that, of lack, or a belief of I haven't got enough degrees after my name yet, or whatever it is, and that reinforces the philosophy and so forth. So then their organization and control isn't revitalized or isn't enhanced, and then we have the opportunity to revitalize it by simply going back to those previous areas we spoke about relative to purpose and belief, and that will then allow us to get an organization around a given thing. And then, like within our Quest guidelines, we always say, look, get the why of a given procedure down and make it known. This is why we're answering the phone this way, before going into any of the details around actually answering the phone, or any scripts or anything like that. So, it allows us then to look at the organizational substance there, and also the eventualities. And that's where every procedure should have an area where, well, what else could happen? What are the things that could possibly go wrong, or the exceptions? So that's another level. So it's 4 levels of a policy, which is in fact, the attract, the organize, engage, and the expand, the four levels of the innate model. But that then allows at the minute level of organization, the why to be very strong. So that governs it.
Yeah, leading with why in through there, leading with the purpose and the belief that we have, and challenging that as well. And I think we did that beautifully through Quest coaching. And for Questers, if you are looking for structure around this, if you are looking for a level of organization and control, look at how the Office Policies Manual is structured. It's very, very useful to bring that about, that we don't start with the procedure, the strategy, or the tactics. We start with the purpose and flow through those four quadrants to make it as holistic and integrated as possible. So I think that a lot of graduates, a lot of new graduates, a lot of seasoned chiropractors look for certainty in their practice by leaning very far into organization and control, by saying, I need to learn another technique, I need to learn more science, I need to increase my understanding, knowledge, data, and information around this at the expense of bringing in their authentic, soulful way. That is the beauty of chiropractic. And not to say those things are wrong or bad. And, I've heard you say many, many, many times, do become a master at your technique. It's an important thing to do. Contextually, right, within that framework of why am I doing this? What is my purpose and belief to serve? And all of that, when we do that beautifully, it leads to well-designed tactics. That is how we then apply and implement all of this. So how would we explore that in a healthy way, Mark, and then maybe also in an unhealthy way?
So as we get clear on why we're doing what we're doing, and we have an organizational structure around it, then it gives us the opportunity to design our ideal practice. And this is a challenge at times with multi-doctor practices, and also for single doctor practices too, for a different reason. But for the if the one chiro, one practice, you have a purpose individually. You have the office purpose, the practice purpose is yours, because you're the only one there along with your team. And so the organization can be done fairly simply. It's a top-down organization. It's usually quite tribal, so that's fairly easy to manage and understand. And like the ideal practice in terms of simplicity would be just one chiro, one CA, and a reasonably small amount of space, and with our policies and procedures isn't huge, because it can be changed at any time by the participants. And they're all one anyway. There's maybe maximum of 3 of them, so really it's no big deal. And once you start to get numbers involved, then other CAs and then other chiros. This is a very interesting area for chiropractic, because the personal expression of every individual is different. There's no two people the same. Even twins, identical twins, there's still difference, crazy difference. So the differences then, how do they exist in a under one banner, under one flag, and is where the purpose then has to be a lot stronger and more inclusive, so that everyone must be able to buy into that. And that's where people won't rally around a small idea. If you're Joe Brown's Chiropractic, and I do great technique, and I look after people really well, and I communicate well, that purpose, that doesn't give a lot of buy-in for another person who comes in, another professional particularly. So then you start to go bigger on that. That then allows you to have the opportunity to have organization, which is more complex, and looks at different scenarios, because you can have different practitioners in there, and then it goes into this area of design, which has to be looking at the differences between those practitioners, and do you try and make one size fits all? Do you try and make them all exactly the same? And in that scenario, it's sort of like, it's not really like having another professional there. It's like having another staff person there that you tell them what to do and how high to jump and so forth. That, that's a tricky one to manage over time, and that model is not particularly. So it's a lot of energy required to do that, but a lot of control required and so forth. So the design is something where you start to look at the models of, or continue to look at the models of your offering and the redesign of your practice as it goes from you and a sidekick to you and two associates, and then maybe you're an associate along with three or five or 10 others. That's the evolution that requires new design parameters around it as the practice gets more complex, more people there, maybe different techniques, or certainly different ways of approaching the various techniques, or different ways of approaching communication. Even though it may even say exactly the same thing, it won't come out exactly the same. So how do we do that? So it's a constant process of change at this point.
Yeah, beautiful, like a river that's flowing, isn't it? And just to touch on, you talked about different levels of expression of a practice, and Greg and I just recorded a really beautiful podcast on that, so we'll reference that. But each of those levels can be healthy and can be unhealthy. But it's interesting, actually, when we look at this paradox or polarity between curiosity and certainty, or beliefs and purpose and organization and control. At those bottom levels of really tribal, certainty means show me your faith, show me your tradition, show me your loyalty. And doubt is the opposite. Doubt is seen as disloyalty, right? Doubt is doubting the tribal chief and all of the experience they bring. And then the next level up, which is kind of this scientific level, certainty is show me the data, show me the model, show me the information, show me the KPIs, and doubt is, okay, well, we could start to maybe test some hypothesis if we're open to it, if we're not thinking that our ability to stick to science needs to be dogmatic, that there is no left or right to it. So we can start to look at that, but there is a risk there of being overconfident or being paralyzed by analysis as well, right? If we lean too far into that. And then the one that you mentioned last, which is this more pluralistic practice that has many people in it. Doubt is a value because it brings more colors to the whole palette. And actually, certainty becomes suspect. So we've done a switch there, right? Where we would say, if we're all certain, if we're all doing the same, then all we've done is just put more machines in the factory, but we haven't actually, we haven't reached further into the community. So there's a bit of moral confusion there, right? It's an interesting switch there.
Oh, totally. And I think something that comes up very often, I think, with new grads particularly, is that they see that they're getting a job. They see that they're when I graduate, I want to get a job in this particular city or that particular technique or that particular type of philosophy or whatever. And so this is something that if as an owner of a practice and you hear this expression, it's a red flag. It's like, okay, there's work to do here. It's like, if this person wants to be a mini me, their tenure is limited. If this person, on the other hand, wants to grow and develop and spread their wings, there is possibility to do that within this organization rather than having to go to another organization, as long as the design is appropriate. So that you get sort of 9 months after graduation, there's discontent that tends to set in as chiropractors start to find their feet. And if they're there, because they're working in a job for the boss, that starts to become an irritant. And so I think that's where the whole the design of the practice itself has to change in order to accommodate.
Yeah.
And that individuality then starts to be a real asset.
Mhm.
So, that's where it builds then from a certain design into a number of different tactics which are rolled out in a strategic way. So
Yeah.
in certain circumstances, then there's a shopping list of tactics that one could use. And there's a certain style around that, and there's policies around it and so forth. But that I don't think balances out the design, because the design can be too um, um, authoritarian, and that then doesn't allow the flexibility in the expression of an individual chiro's tactical approach.
Yeah, if you're
So,
sticking to principles so much, it may come at
mm,
the cost of adaptability and
yes.
capacity building, resilience, flexibility. And I just want to switch roles there for a second. You're talking about the associate's perspective. If you're a principal chiropractor and you're looking to bring on someone into the team, and we won't go into all of the complexities of that right now, but if you are thinking it'd be great to have a mini me, or it'd be great to have someone who can just do what I do, or it'd be great to teach them exactly the way that I do things, there's a healthy way to do that. And also, this may be a bit of a painful truth to explore some of your own beliefs and purpose for why you're bringing someone on. And the resources to look for that would be definitely the associate-driven practice. There's a lot of resources and availability for expanding our perspective in there. And also the Attractive Practice book, I think, touches on that really nicely.
Yeah, well, I think the important part about this too is that we're covering essentially 4 different areas, and there's quantum 1 style practices, there's quantum 2 style practices, 3 and 4, and so there's an evolution that takes place from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and there's constant shift and change based on firstly curiosity, then on the calibration that brings about new organization, and then the design, and then ultimately the higher level leverage that comes with the Quorum 4. So, and each of them require a different model of practice, just as it has a different model of the world. And so, they're sort of all interwoven. It's an integral network here of these differences. And the question to us is, what's as an owner, for example, is what stage are we at? What's working, what's not working? What's the next stage? And you can start to look at the various associates, because you're going to have associates in each of those areas in one practice. So,
Yep.
there are associates that come in and they work as employees initially, but there's a time that comes when they have to be given the permission to grow their wings.
Yep.
Let's
Let's not get too distracted. I know this is a huge topic, and using the analogy before, let's not fly to the wrong destination. Bring it back to certainty, to doubts, to healthy questioning, and there's a lot of work that could be done there on the different models of practice. But we were talking about implementing design and tactics in a way that flows from that belief to that organization control. I just want to ask your comments on one thing, which is, so often I see new grads in their hunger to be of service, they try to integrate every single technique possible, and they end up, skimming the surface on so many, but never going deep on any of them. And for me, this is always, the attempt to control without starting in the area of belief and purpose, which brings about the wrong design and tactics. So how would you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the traps that, our practices are, personally, and I say my practice, it's our practice. We happen to be a majority owner, but there's some high level people there who are very experienced and teach teach chiropractors around the world, in various aspects of techniques and so forth, and lead in many different areas. And the temptation for a new grad is to come in and see these new viewed sort of things I didn't see at college, I've never seen in a seminar, and it's only talked to high level people, and I've got it right at my fingertips here. And so they start diving into the minutia of these tactical variations, and that could be reserved for the 2% of all people, but they tend to then try and apply it to everyone and outside of the context. So I think a really important part about this in terms of the design is that there's protocols at play that give a step-by-step structure, a rationale. There's evidence behind it in various forms, be inductive or maybe even just deductive. But there's a structure there that we encourage the new people in the first 3 to 4 years of their practice life is to really nail that, nail the protocols that have been around for a long time and are constantly tweaked. They're taught by accredited associations and networks and organizations, so that you don't have to do the training. It's not about you training the people. It's about them learning the by the book, the ways, and save the tactical things. Don't hide the tactical things, but put the tactical things into their due positions, because a tactic is something that's called on at a moment's notice. A strategy is not. You go onto the field in a rugby team, and you're given, there's a certain strategy that we're going to play because of this opposition and how they roll, and you will roll out the tactics. Now, if those tactics aren't going to plan, or there's a certain occasion when the design and the strategy isn't going to plan, there's a certain stage there where you'll have a code usually that says, okay, we're going to use tactic number 20 or whatever it is, and they will switch. It might mean go harder, go softer, go to the left, go to the right, whatever it is. But there's a shift that takes place, and I think in our practice it's a similar thing. We've got a certain design there that gives way to a strategy that allows for tactics to be called when appropriate, and by all means build up that grab bag of tricks in the tactical department, but they're not first plays.
Yeah, become more masterful at one technique so that you know how to draw on those different tactics, and not get confused, which builds up more doubt. As you said initially, the drive for increased certainty can bring about more uncertainty, because we get confused. I think going back to our analogy of flying a plane, which I certainly don't, but it'd be like saying, rather than becoming masterful at the protocols of a specific plane so that as the weather changes, I can change tactics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to learn how to drive every single vehicle on Earth possible by just, moving it a couple of meters, and then expect that I can take a jumbo jet up into the air. It's just not going to work. It doesn't apply. And it's a similar thing with different techniques, right? Just lean deep into one technique so that you can actually build up your certainty in a healthy way. That's how you're designing your tactics to come alive with the people that you have. And stay curious, so that you can see the limitations of those techniques, not to become to invite in other techniques, but just to allow your mind to be exploratory and curious and creative about what comes about.
Yeah, that's if this, then what?
Exactly.
And
yes,
that's all part of the tactics.
Yeah, and that brings us beautifully into the fourth quadrant, which is all about looking at the outcomes and integrating all of this. So again, coming to the topic of certainty versus control versus doubt, and an exploration and curiosity. How do we integrate all of these quadrants?
Okay, so I mean, there's only so much that a person can do. And over time, as an organization grows and maybe a practice, still stays the same, but over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the practitioner, so if it's a single practitioner practice, there are other things that person may be drawn to. It could be to write a book, it could be to, have influence in an association or whatever it be. There's a form of leverage that can be attained through that will take what they're doing and what they have and their impact into much higher levels of effects and impacts to, through that contribution. So there's this is where, regardless of whether we're a solo practitioner or whether we're a multi-doctor or multi-practice owner, there's a time that comes that we must use leverage in order to ensure that our legacy, I guess, is there. But it's not that we do it for the legacy. It's just legacy tends to follow this long-standing impact. And if you go into any town, particularly say a country town, and ask about the chiropractors who used to be in that country town, this is, and talking to some of the old people there, and they will just start gushing with praise and admiration and experiences, the quirks and everything of these people that have been dead for the last 30 years, but they used to be there and they saw them as babies and their grandparents saw them and so forth. So in other words, there's a generative nature to this that goes over time that we won't see. So this is an element here where we think big and we bring our purpose through into how can this be leveraged into a much more impactful form that I don't have to do all the work. So this is where we can take the elements of the previous three areas that we've discussed, the attract, the nurture, the deliver areas, and look at, okay, how can we take this out to the public in ways that is going to go deep into society's records. So so I think things like being on organisations, on boards, and on colleges and so forth, having that sort of input allows the unseen future to have a taste of it.
Yeah. And one of the ones that comes here for me is not only driving associations and organizations, which I know we've discussed on the podcast before, and I know is something that is close to your heart and mine as well. And not everyone's. Some chiropractors pull away from that, and I understand.
Yeah.
But maybe one way that you can have a great influence on the future is not only being absolutely hugely impactful in your own practice, but also impactful in a way to send more people to the right chiropractic colleges to develop greater practices in the future. It's like planting a seed for a tree, not only whose shade you may never sit under, but whose fruits may bear forests way beyond your imagination.
Absolutely. And that happens in a lifetime. And it's probably even greater in multiple lifetimes. So there's that opportunity to take apart what we've experienced and put it together in a different way. And that then has impact beyond our unique, our soul ability to impact, so it empowers others and it is truly generative.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and say it comes in many ways. And like, for example, we one of the products of our purpose and our delivery mechanisms, our organization is money. And, it's representative of energy. Money is something, and we can argue and discuss the values of money and so forth. And humanity's done that over many, many different epochs. But the fact is that there's a substance that, as crude as it may be, is a reflection on the energy that has gone towards that substance. So when we give it that substance, that can have leverage beyond our personal ability to influence that leverage as well. So be careful of and just things like where you put your superannuation money, for example, and for those countries that have that, or 401k
Retirement funds.
But retirement funds, yeah. Does it go to organizations that are supporting your cause or not?
Well, even a simple thing like, are you actually members or donors to associations, organizations, and colleges that are supportive of the sort of future that you want to create, which comes back to the quadrant 1, beliefs and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the interesting thing about that is there's a lot of doubt and uncertainty in creating that future, right? Like if I plant this seed, I have no idea if it's going to bear fruit or not, but it's believing in that bigger ideal.
Yeah. And it's way beyond your control and your tactics. It's sure it's got a tactical component to it, but it's not directly, as you say, it's not a direct reflection. So I think that's something to be aware of, is to go into the next level of that, which is governance, where we can bring our skills to play in terms of planting seeds that will be taken up by someone else in some other way, that will move humanity forward and based on one's purpose, right? So whatever that value judgment is. So I think that that is a key area for us to engage in, which is chiropractors we tend not to. We tend to run fairly insular lives around this, and maybe we'd look at this in context of our immediate family, or maybe just our immediate practice. But there's room here for planning into the future and dropping the right resources there for people into the future to bring about the vision that we initially set ourselves out with when we first graduated, relative to our purpose.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, let's not delve into governance, because that's a huge topic again. That is, we wouldn't do due respect right now. But I think, looking at circling back around here and bringing this to a close, we talked about certainty, uncertainty, doubt, curiosity, control, organization. And maybe when we haven't brought these together well, then we could become either dogmatic in our search for certainty, or even paralyzed by our curiosity and our doubt. And that could cause us to collapse either into that rigid certainty, where we're closed and controlling, or looping in this endless doubt, stalled and cynical and searching forever. But when it's beautifully brought together and flowing through those 4 quadrants and creating this aesthetic, I think the aesthetic that comes out of it is humility, this humble resolve and hope. A stance that I'm committing clearly while staying really open to not having confirmation, to leaning into that doubt. And, I can still make sense while I'm uncertain. I can still continue to learn in my flexibility and adaptability, and trusting that my beliefs and my purpose will flow through to create the integration and the outcomes that I'm looking for. And when I don't see those, then I can lean into trusting my exploration of my principles, my beliefs, and my purpose, and keep on flowing through that. Is that how you're seeing all of this pull together?
Yeah, so well summed up there, Nimrod. Yeah, I mean, really, it is a constant. We'll put it this way: we have the opportunity for a constant work in progress. And I think as chiropractors, we recognise that we're this forever growing and morphing into new forms, formation of energy that then reflects in the physical form that we have and the stuff that we have and the things that we do. And so, the aging process is one of shriveling, not being curious and just being certain about one's little patch, And I think that if we can allow ourselves to expand those elements of inquiry just on a very simple daily basis, some of the most interesting people I've met are people who are intensely curious about others, and that would be, in terms of, we often tend to think of it as, so what can I get out of it? And, if we're have an opportunity to have a couple of words to Elon Musk, then, wow, I'll be really curious about this. But in terms of the person that hands out toilet paper in a city in Thailand, to not be curious there is, I think, a huge loss of possibility for the individual. And obviously, language and everything can be barriers, but there's if we're interested in our people, our practice members, we're back into practice here, and we're really curious about how their body is working right now, how their mind is working, what they see, how they work, what their belief structures are. That will build the practice just there. Just, it doesn't have to be any more than that. Simply being curious with a person and getting them to be curious about themselves. What are you noticing? And instead of having an agenda for them. Even though, there's obviously a purpose there, and that has within it some degree of agenda, but the part of that agenda is to have no agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
To allow it to flow,
To tread
So I
that
think-
paradox.
And that's to bring it right back to just one little thing, which we could sum this whole dialogue up is to say, look, hey, be really, really intensely curious about, that person who serves you a meal on an airplane, or that child who seems to be doing some bizarre behaviors in your practice and so forth. So, wherever it is, big or small or rich or poor, it doesn't matter. You will learn so much from them, and they will blossom as a result, and so will you.
Yeah, well, I love that. And, maybe a beautiful, actionable step that is going to have ripple effects in your practice is next time you're on public transport, put your phone down, lean over and be curious and just see what comes out. I think that, it's vulnerable, it's uncertain, it's risky, it's exposing ourselves, and it's going to pay dividends in your practice to help bridge this paradox between doubt, certainty, uncertainty, and curiosity. So we touched on a few resources. The innate model is by far the strongest one here. We've also touched on the book that you wrote, The Attractive Practice, as well as the Associate-Driven Practice and the Office Policy Manual. And there's also the intensive that you and I will be doing in March, which is actually looking at beliefs and where they could be limiting us. So quite a few things there that is available to questers and non-questers. Or if you are a quester or a non-quester and you're interested in any of those resources I mentioned, reach out to us, and we will help you along with that. That's what we're here for. So, Mark, in all of my exploratory curiosity, I am hugely grateful and thankful to you and to all that you bring to continuously expand who we are while we are also on a journey of mastery. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Nimrod, and thank you for the the mental acuity that you have and the ability to ask the right questions at the right time, and allow, and myself, for example, to be able to waffle away around perspective and some viewpoints, and bring them back on track. I think it's a really great skill that you have, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.